Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this deep dive webinar into the new Deepcrawl experience that we launched at the beginning of last week. Hopefully you've had a chance to log in and take a quick look around. Got a couple of colleagues here with me today. Firstly, Matt Ford, he's one of our product managers and has been with us for about 4.5 years. He actually used to work in customer success before moving over to our product team, so you may be already familiar with a few of you. We've also got Dave Brown with us today. He's been here for about 6 years and is our Director of Solution Engineering. So I'm going to bring them in shortly, but there's just a couple of brief housekeeping points to cover before we get started. So first of all, at the very bottom of the Zoom screen, you should see a Q&A box. So if you do have any questions as we go through the content, please do type them into that box so we can make sure everything's captured in the same place. We're going to aim to cover as many of those questions as we can at the end of the webinar. And if there are any that we don't have time for, or if we need to get some more information, then we'll follow up with you after the webinar on those. There'll also be a short survey at the end of the webinar. It'll take less than a minute to complete. So please do fill that out at the end, as that all your feedback will help us define our future webinar program, and it'll also help make improvements to these sessions. And finally, we will also be recording the webinar, so we'll share that recording with you so you can review again at a later date, or you can share with any colleagues who maybe couldn't attend today. So with the housekeeping out of the way, let's take a look at the agenda. So we're first going to cover off just a bit of context and look at why we've made these changes to the Deepcrawl experience. We're then going to go into a little bit deeper into what's changed. And then finally, we're going to take a quick look at some of the stuff that we've got planned next for Deepcrawl. So with that in mind, Matt, let me come to you first for that context. Could you give us some detail around why we've made these changes to the Deepcrawl platform?
Yep, definitely. Hello, everyone. So you'll have probably noticed by now the app looks a bit different. And what we've focused on for this big change is not only an improved interface, where obviously it looks different. It looks a bit fresher, it looks nicer. We focused on trying to improve the user experience, make it quicker and a bit more friendly to use. But the reason we've done this is not just to make it look nicer. As our platform's kind of evolved, we're adding additional products. We added Automation Hub last year, and we are looking at introducing a third app this year, which more to come on that later. And with the addition of each new product, it didn't make sense to build a new product on our old infrastructure, our old platform. So as we kind of added Automation Hub, we acknowledged that the feel and the look and the experience were slightly different. So part of this redesign was not just so much about user experience, but also unification. So a consistent user experience across all of our apps, and just a nicer experience when you have multiple apps to switch between them. So the unification was one large part of what we were trying to achieve. Also performance improvement is another. So hopefully you'll have noticed that the new app is much quicker. We've migrated from an old Angular system to now React, and it is quicker, it's more performant, and hopefully should be easier and nicer to navigate through the app, through all the reports as you're using it. And the next thing that we also focused on was improving navigation. So figuring out how you can quickly and easily and more simply navigate through between your apps, through the projects, through all of the data within Deepcrawl. So we've added this side navigation, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail, and it improved kind of how you navigate through those elements. But also this is kind of the start of a journey for Deepcrawl. It's not just a new look and feel. And I wanted to stress that what we've actually done is completely rebuilt the backend from scratch with a focus and an emphasis on scalability and flexibility. So it's not just a kind of facelift. We've actually redesign the way that we build our code to focus on building flexible code that can be extended with kind of configuration files. And what that means, why that's important, is we at Deepcrawl have the same problem that you as SEOs have, is that we work with developers and developers don't always understand SEO. So when we come to build new additional material like graphs or reports, we kind of have to go through, explain what this graph should represent, what data it should show, and so on. But what we've done is given our SEO experts the ability to configure the data into reports and visualizations with their SEO expertise. And our developers can focus on coding for scale of our infrastructure. So this kind of redesign, this new experience is really about setting us up for the future to be able to more quickly and easily develop more better features to be able to put out into the world.
Great, thank you for that, Matt. I know you've got a little bit more for us on that front a little bit later on. But what we'll do now is we'll actually start to dig a little bit deeper and start to look at what's new. And Matt, obviously you touched on the sort of navigational aspects on there, but maybe you could talk us through some of those improvements in a bit more detail.
Yes. So one of the things that I mentioned was we've got a new left navigation. Within that navigation, you can now switch between your apps. There's an app switcher with a little drop down. If you haven't seen it, go have a click on it, click between the apps. Hopefully this makes it a lot easier to switch between them as you're using them all. And you can also now see your running crawls and any drafted projects easily by just clicking on that black side nav on the left. And what we've also done is tried to figure out how we can improve the workflow within Deepcrawl. So we've been having feedback for years that the level of Deepcrawl data, the kind of depth of the data we've got is great, but the tool's not very good at giving people guidance on where to look. So you kind of jumped in to Deepcrawl and you have to kind of make sense of what the data is showing you and where you need to look to identify the issues. So one of the changes we've made is on the left navigation when you're in the project view. We've got this wide nav now. At the top of that, you can switch between your projects with the project switcher to quickly navigate between your common projects that you're using. You can search for any reports that you're looking for. You can see the task manager there to manage your tasks. And the categories of SEO is where we've made some tweaks. So what this used to show is the categories, subcategories, and nested under that was all of the reports within that category. Now we found that to be a bit too cluttered and a bit overwhelming for people that aren't as kind of confident in what they should be looking at. So we've simplified that down to just the categories, so indexation, for example, and then within that subcategories. And now each category and subcategory has its own dedicated dashboard with visuals on data only relevant to that category. And also within that category, you'll only see the issues and the changes and the reports relevant to that category. The idea behind this being that you've kind of got many steps towards diagnosis now. This obviously isn't the perfect form of guidance, but giving you a kind of closer step to, I don't know where the issues lie, but if I navigate through the categories, I can kind of get a step closer to figuring out where are the specific issues, where should I focus my attention. So in doing that, we've actually added over 50 new graphs and charts to Deepcrawl. And we've been able to do this because of that config file kind of flexible code base that I mentioned earlier. So normally it would take us, I don't know, a couple of weeks to add 2 graphs. And we managed to, in a much shorter time period, add a lot more graphs to this new experience. And so we intend to continue to kind of iterate down that path to make it easier for our users to figure out where they should focus their attention.
Great, thank you for that, Matt. So Dave, let's bring you in here. Maybe you can sort of start talking us through some of the other improvements that we've made to Analytics Hub and also Automation Hub.
Yeah, so kind of following on from what Matt was talking about with the left navigation, we have made significant improvements to sort of generally the workflows that you might go through with Deepcrawl. So the first is that we have put the task manager kind of front and center as part of the main navigation. It used to be hidden in the top right-hand corner behind a little person icon. Now it's much easier to get to, quicker, and is kind of persistent across the entire view. We've also improved kind of the trend lines and the data that you can get from the project task view. We've also changed slightly the way in which when you create a task for a specific report, it will only show you within that report view, it will only show you the tasks that you've created for that specific report. Rather than showing you every single task that you've ever created for every single report, we're just going to show you the issues that you've already maybe identified or things that are related to that particular report, rather than overwhelming you with every single piece of data. The next thing that we have improved is the actual report view itself. I think the biggest change that we've made here is the ability to customize columns. So previously we had a set of default views for every single report, and that was kind of it. We were sort of dictating to you what columns you could look at. This way you can customize those columns with any one of the hundreds of different metrics that we have within Deepcrawl. You can select and add or remove columns. You can sort by columns, and you can also change the order of the columns themselves. So it gives you a lot more flexibility to see what you want to see. All of the customization that you do is saved in your browser. So if person A wants to organize their columns in one way, but person B wants it in a different way, that's totally unique to them and their browser. You'll also notice, I don't know if you can see it on this one, but you'll be able to see which tasks have been created from that particular report as well. Matt talked about the over 50 different visualizations that we have added to Deepcrawl. Probably the one that I'm the most happy, or there is a couple, but the topic that I'm most happy about is our log file dashboard. So previously in Deepcrawl, again, it was a list of some reports, and I think there was one visualization without our log file reporting. We've increased the sophistication of the log file reporting and analysis and insight that you can get significantly. And this is an example of where all of the effort that went in by our development and product team in the back end has really kind of come to fruition in the front end by being able to build these reports. So as you can see from the GIF that we've got going here, you can see a lot more detail in terms of trends over time, how Google and other search engines are accessing the website. You can see how efficient that is over time. You can dive into exactly, where it's about to show it now there, the web crawl depth of where those bot hits are coming from, the overlap between what we found as a crawler and what Google has found. So it'll give you a much more insight. Similarly with GSC and analytics, we've added a few more visualizations in here. So you can see, get more insights trended over time, what types of pages are generating impressions or clicks, easily see which pages per segment as well, which segments are kind of performing the best in search. So there are some great visualizations to check out there. Changing gears a little bit and moving into Automation Hub. We have improved our smart threshold algorithm. So we've made some tweaks there whereby we now look at a slightly longer range period to get more accurate thresholds to ensure that what you're testing against is making sure that, or sorry, let me start again. Making sure that the thresholds that are being set are accurate to ensure that you're only being alerted to issues as and when a release goes live. We've also added a little bit more flexibility in terms of how frequently you can test using our scheduler. So previously it was every 4 hours, every 4 hours, daily, weekly, fortnightly. We've now added in every hour, every 4 hours, every 12 hours. So you can test more frequently using the scheduler if you're not connected to your CI/CD. The other big bit of feedback that we had from our Automation Hub tool was that it was very difficult, particularly when managing lots and lots of different test suites on perhaps different staging environments for different domains, to actually find the test suite that you wanted to go into. So we've added a search capability, which is consistent with Analyze. So it's much easier for you to find the specific test suite that you're looking for. The other thing that we've launched recently is Circle CI Orb, a Jenkins plugin and GitHub Actions to basically more seamlessly integrate with a variety of CI tools, which is great. So they're much more out of the box and easier to connect with. And the last piece that we've improved on Automation Hub is the actual notifications that come through from via Slack. So previously it would just say, this build has failed. This is how many fails warnings. We now tell you exactly why this particular build has failed, or its warnings. Or there are warnings, so that you can quickly ascertain exactly what has gone wrong with that particular launch.
Great, thanks, Dave. That's really useful, and hopefully that's given everyone a good overview of the core changes within the Deepcrawl experience. Excuse me. So what we wanted to come on to now was just to kind of give you a little bit more information on sort of what's coming up for Deepcrawl. So let's dive into that now. And Matt, I'll come back to you for this. So yeah, maybe you can talk us through some of the things that people can expect to see in, or what we've got planned for Deepcrawl in the coming months.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of things that we're working on, as you can imagine, but there are some standout elements that I wanted to highlight, and also products. So the first one of these is health scores. Users have been asking us for years to help them build health scores or scorecards, some kind of roll up of a number of different metrics into a score that they can then track over time. So I know a lot of people have been building this themselves by just exporting our data and kind of building those kind of weighted categories themselves. This is one thing that we're planning to build this year, and then use that data across our platform. So using some kind of categorization. So you can imagine a performance health score, maybe an indexability health score, content health score, and giving you that weighted score that you could then see over time and understand where are the areas that need attention. Again, coming back to this point of helping users understand where are the areas that need the most attention quickly. This is an area that we think will definitely improve the way that you can kind of quickly at a glance look at where are the core areas that need work. If your health score for content is tanking, obviously that's an area that you should probably focus attention on if everything else is looking good. So we're aiming to introduce that this year. And probably we're looking at the second half of this year for health scores. Next is Monitor Hub. So you might have noticed on the app switcher in the left navigation that there are now 3 icons. We've got Analytics Hub, Automation Hub, and Monitor. Now, Monitor has come out of conversations for years with the people that we've worked with, especially from people that look after multiple sites, around the fact that if you are responsible for the performance of a website, there are so many people that touch that website. You've got engineers, maybe multiple teams of engineers, you've got content teams, you've got all sorts of people making changes and potentially automated deployments up to, I don't know, multiple times a day. And it's really, really difficult to understand what all the changes are on a site over time. Yet as the SEO, you're kind of ultimately held responsible for that performance. Even if you didn't make that change, the expectation is that you should have known about it, which is really difficult. So the point of Monitor Hub is to give insight into exactly that. So what changes have happened across a whole portfolio of websites without having to go into each one in detail. So go through the normal analytics flow of going into a project, going to the right report, identifying it, looking at the trend line, coming out, looking at your other website. It's a kind of all in one place where you can see trends of all of your sites for only the metrics that you care about. So cutting out the noise and giving you a quick place to identify any significant changes that you need to work on. Now, this is in a limited beta at the moment, so we're testing this with a handful of our customers to get feedback and develop it. So it's in its kind of early stages. We want to understand, are there any kind of core functionalities that people feel are missing in its current state before we then work towards a wider release. Next is the enhanced crawler. So this is an exciting one and speaks to the point I made earlier about this is all kind of setting us up for the future. We built a crawler again from the ground up with focus on enhancing flexibility and scalability. So what we're aiming for with our new crawler is the ability to crawl up to 100 million URLs in a single crawl. So for our clients that have some of the biggest websites in the world, that's obviously important. 100 million pages in one single crawl is a significant improvement on what we've got currently. And also for speed, we're aiming for speeds up to 150 URLs per second, including JavaScript rendering in that for a single crawl. So 150 URLs per second. And what this also does is allows us to bring in some additional stuff, some cool stuff. So we'll be able to bring in flexible metrics, which, without going into the details, is allowing us to build some more cool stuff in the future. So not only is it setting us up for custom metrics, which I'll get onto, but also it means that from our backend perspective, crawls can scale independently. So sometimes we have performance issues because we have one really large crawl that is using up all of our kind of processing power. And the part of the purpose of this new crawler is to make sure that that doesn't affect other crawls in our system, so that it's kind of distributed evenly and we have enhanced performance and there aren't any kind of mishaps when your Monday morning crawl hasn't finished on time. So this new crawler has, we're rolling it out at the moment. So that's going to be gradually rolled out throughout the course of this year. So we're continuing to do tests and load tests and roll it out to small segments of customers at a time. And you'll receive a notification when it has been activated for your account and with the details of the specific details of the new crawler. And finally, the last thing I wanted to highlight was custom metrics is something that we're excited about introducing. So this is being enabled by these flexible metrics from the new crawler. And essentially it's just adding additional metrics that we can use, we can pull out and we can bring up in our reports. So we're thinking things like accessibility metrics, compliance metrics, security metrics. There's a whole kind of field of data that is important to a website that, especially since SEO is increasingly becoming about user experience and not just, you know, the kind of technical elements or the content of the page, but the whole package. So these new metrics we're planning to add, we think are going to be really what the market needs, if we're going to keep up with the industry, and as SEO kind of changes over time, we need to be able to add these additional data points that will be increasingly important. So custom metrics will allow us to do that. They also will allow us to be able to choose which metrics we do use or don't use for a given crawl. So why that's important is we, in the future, could be able to have a small crawl with a subset of data points. So instead of crawling your entire site for every single metric within Deepcrawl, say you want to only crawl, I don't know, 5 metrics or a certain group of metrics, and run off a quicker crawl for only those metrics that have kind of different processing times. So should translate into quicker, more targeted results for your crawls. So that's what we've got coming up. These are the kind of main highlights. There are other things we are working on, but I thought these were the kind of nice big things to draw everyone's attention to.
Great, thank you for that, Matt. So yeah, that was a lot of the content that we wanted to run through with you today. We've obviously got a bit of time for some questions. We have had a few that have come through so far. So let me just pull up the question area. So let's start with the first one. So yeah, I mean, a good question. When will the old view of the apps be switched off? So we're currently looking at around the end of the first quarter to switch off the legacy version, but basically we're monitoring adoption on a week-to-week basis, monitoring the feedback that we get back. So that's kind of a rough aim at the moment, but we haven't got a date set in stone as yet. But rest assured that we will give you lots of notice before that happens. And obviously, once we've got a lot of people using the new one, hopefully people are seeing the benefit of that new experience and are enjoying that already. And the second one that we have here is, when will we get access to the enhanced crawler? Excuse me. So yeah, I mean, as Matt sort of alluded to, the crawler improvements are being rolled out based on the sort of crawl frequency and the URL volume. As Matt mentioned, we're aiming for those sort of 100 million crawls in a single crawl, and some of those speed enhancements. So we're looking to basically ramp that up, and as we get to higher speeds and higher volumes, then we'll be rolling that out to more customers. So you will see an in-app notification when it's enabled on your account. And at the moment, the improvements are automatically being applied for the web crawls, and additional sources will follow on later in the year as well. One other quick question just around the upcoming improvements and sort of some timescales of when those are likely to happen. I think you mentioned them a little bit, but maybe we should just recap that, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, in terms of what's coming up, for the first half of this year, we are working on refining the new experience. We're aware that with a launch and migration to a new platform, there come certain bugs and things that we need to pick up and refine. So we're going to be working on refining that experience for the remainder of the first half of the year, and also starting platform work to enable us to do some of these bigger things like health scores. So we're starting to work on custom metrics at the end of Q2 this year, and health scores we're expecting for sometime in the second half of this year we'll be working on.
Great. Thank you for that. So we also had one in from Pedro looking at asking if we've got any examples of the types of custom metrics that we're thinking of introducing. Matt, I don't know if that's something you could pick up.
Yeah, so compliance metrics, security metrics, accessibility is a big one that we get a lot of requests for at the moment. So ensuring that we can surface that data to you. There might be more options available to us. With the new crawler, it has this ability to have more flexible data points. So those are the main ones that we're highlighting at the moment as ones we definitely want to target this year. Accessibility and security being the top two. But there's potentially room to add more to that. So I guess more to come on that in the future.
Great, thank you for that. I've got a couple of others coming in. There's a couple coming in on the chat as well, so bear with me 2 seconds. There was a question around whether we're sunsetting any features from the old version. Matt or Dave, you could speak to that.
I don't think we are we? I think there's parity between the old version and the new version, other than the additional features and charts that we've added.
Yeah, nothing that I'm aware of that we're specifically sunsetting.
Great. And just to follow up on the custom metrics, there's a question here about whether we'll be able to crawl multiple URLs or maybe a folder structure at one go. Is that something that's in the pipeline, you know?
That's a good question. I don't know is the answer to some of the details of the new crawler. The point of this crawler is to enable flexibility in what we can crawl. So I've seen another question in the Q&A around recrawling specific URLs within an existing crawl. So sometimes you might have server errors during your, say, I don't know, your monthly crawl. And you might want to then recrawl that specific subset of URLs. These are things that they're made possible with the new crawler. I can't say whether for sure we have on our roadmap the ability to like have a feature to do that, so recrawl the specific URLs. But the point of this is that it's enabling us to open up those avenues. These are the kind of main things that we're working on, but obviously as we go throughout the year, we will closer refine exactly what we can do and what we want to add to the roadmap off the back of this functionality.
Great, thank you for that. Another one from Pedro, maybe Dave, I can come to you for this one. It's with regard to log file analysis and how do we add them into Deepcrawl and will it combine them automatically?
So there's a couple of different ways in which you can do it. The first one is manually, but that's sometimes a little bit painful. The way to automatically ingest log files into Deepcrawl is with our log file partner, logs.io. They will take the raw log files, usually we'll grab that via an S3 bucket and pass the data, and then we will grab the data from there, and then we will overlay the log file data that we get from logs.io with the crawl data and analytics data and all of the other data within Deepcrawl itself. So you need to have the logs.io as part of your license agreement. So if that is not the case, then feel free to reach out to your CSM to see if we can get that added.
Great, thank you for that. Excuse me, one other that's just come through, Matt, I don't know whether you'll have any insight into this, but whether there's any plans to introduce chart annotations for change history charts. something that Chris, I think, would find really useful to flag why something's changed for future race reference, so that you can get a prompt of that before he forgets.
Yeah, this is something that comes up quite often, and it definitely would be nice functionality to have. I'm the product manager for Monitor, and as I've been talking to our beta testers for Monitor, this is something that's come up as, in the same way that kind of Google Analytics does it, the ability to just add a flag or a milestone or some kind of annotation onto a trend line would be really useful. So for example, if one of the difficulties, one of the challenges of Deepcrawl data is that if your settings aren't consistent, then that can kind of mess with your trend lines. If you change the scope of your crawl, or you've excluded or included a segment of URLs, that can make the trend lines kind of wobble a bit. So the ability to just add an annotation to that to say crawl settings changed, that's what this is, ignore it, or algorithm update, add that here. It's something we're exploring. It would be nice to have for sure. So I can't guarantee that we'll have it, but it's definitely something that's coming up, and we're exploring whether it's possible.
Great. And I think the last question that we have so far is another one from Pedro, asking whether editable segments are on the roadmap for 2022. Dave, is that something you can speak to?
Yeah, I don't know if it's on the roadmap specifically. Matt could probably point to that, but that is a really good question. I have found that myself, where I'm building, a list of 50 different segments, and then I make a mistake and I just want to edit one thing. In that case, you can just copy and reapply, but then you lose your historical data. Or even if you want to rename a segment, it can be a bit challenging. So I'm really glad that question was asked, and this is recorded, because we can use this as evidence to our product and dev team that is a good feature. But I don't know. I don't think it is on the roadmap. Is it, Matt? Or
it's not on the immediate short-term roadmap. We've got loads of things in the pipeline that we need to prioritize against each other for the kind of longer term. We've got our immediate plan for the next few months, but we kind of leave that a little bit more open to moving things around to prioritize things. What I can say though is that as part of the Monitor app, we're looking at how do we include segmentation within that. So being able to drill down into your segments across multiple projects. The challenge with that, as you can imagine, is a segment is at a single project level. So if you don't have the same segment set up across all of your different projects, what does that look like? So this is a problem we're going to solve. So that might come back to just looking at how we do segmentation within Deepcrawl in general. So this could be part of that work, and we've definitely got it noted down that it's a pain point that you can't edit segments. So potentially it's definitely in the pool of things we could do, balancing all of our resources.
Great, thank you for that both. Yeah, so it looks like that's all the questions that we've had through. So hopefully we've answered all of those sufficiently for you. So really, it just serves for me to say, well, thank you for everyone that's joined us today. We hope you found that useful. And obviously, if you do have any other questions, then please feel free to reach out to your customer success representative. Thank you very much again for attending, and also thank you to Matt and Dave for talking us through all of that content. So yeah, have a good rest of your day, and we look forward to speaking to you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.